Hi, this is Cora Stack here, Dr. Stack. I was just reading some of the comments there. I read them all, and I usually just press the tick, which means I acknowledge, it just means acknowledge. And very few were, there's one or two that were inappropriate, but, people are entitled on my channel to express a view, and when I take it, it means I acknowledge, So it doesn't necessarily mean I agree because I haven't the facts about everything. But let's just. It is the conversations generated by the comments led me to dig a little bit deeper into why people are feeling so squeezed, and I've just let's look at the facts. So I want to talk a few minutes. Hopefully this will be helpful to people listening, that they kind of understand why they're feeling, the shocks, the huge, issues with the cost of living. And also I want to talk about something that's really pointed out, which is the wage increases versus the increase in houses, and how that cumulatively over years and years has effectively put so many ordinary people into housing poverty. This is rarely mentioned, and it's something I've been thinking about for a while to talk about. So I think now's a good time to talk about that particular point, which might explain a lot of why so many people are really feeling very squeezed because of the way wage bargaining is done, and the way it doesn't really cover the massive cost of house inflation. So I want to take a few minutes to talk about the rising cost of living in Ireland and why so many ordinary people, especially workers and students and others, are feeling squeezed. Since COVID and the Ukraine war, we've seen a wave of price hikes across almost every essential bill. Let's look at the facts. This is what I like to concentrate on, the facts. Petrol is up about 38% since before the crisis. Diesel has risen even more, around 56%. I mean, most people have to drive a car, so you're talking about huge increases there. Household electricity bills are up about 32% and gas bills by 53%. Food prices have climbed steadily up to 25% increases over the last couple of years. Health insurance premiums have gone up by around 11%, and motor insurance is also rising again. The NCT test has risen by 9%, but the retest has jumped 43% just this year. And while car tax hasn't moved much, families are still struggling with food, fuel, insurance and energy all at once. And it's not just these costs. Internet and phone bills have crept up year on year. Existing broadband customers are now paying 20 to 25% more than they were paying just a few years ago. Some mobile phone plans build in a 4.5 annual increase every April. And overall, many people have seen 17 to 18% rises in their bills. One example, a basic broadband plan was €62, went up to €74 in just 2 years. These hikes hit hardest for people who can't easily switch, students who rely on mobile data for study, or older vulnerable people who simply stay with their provider and get penalised for their loyalty. I mean, this is what's happening. People that are loyal to their, to their mobile phone company or their electricity company seem to be getting penalised because if they switched, they'll get a better deal. So it's become like a switching business. I mean, this is outrageous. I mean, if you're switching in all these areas, sure it'd be a full-time job doing switching. Now, why has all this happened? Global shocks like the pandemic and the Ukraine war pushed up wholesale. I think this is an important point because I think there was a point there about the Green Party, being responsible for all the energy hikes. That's not quite true, as I understand it. I mean, I can understand the the person, being a lot of us people were very cross at the Green Party because they felt they were ignoring, the problems with the people had in rural areas where they had no access to transport other than the car, and with the carbon tax hikes was going to hit them disproportionately. And I agree with that. So from that point of view, I agree with the person who was talking about that really hit the rural people a lot more than people who wouldn't be driving long distances, perhaps in cities and towns. Global, but the real problem. Is, according to the research, is the global shocks like the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, and the Ukraine war pushed up wholesale energy and supply chain costs. Now, it's very hard we'd have to go further into that change, where where the hikes are across that chain, but that's how it happened. But also businesses passed these costs on, and in many cases supermarkets and service providers have added their own margin increases on top. So you see, they're all taking a piece of the cake, if you like, in terms of the increase. They're adding their own margins on as well. Telecoms and insurance have also hardwired annual increases into contracts. I mean, how many people know this? Are looking at the fine print in every contract. The result: crippling bills for people just trying to go to work, keep the lights on, and put food on the table. Students are hit particularly hard, living on very tight budgets, many now forced to choose between essentials and having extraordinary difficulties, as we know, with trying to secure a roof over their head. Basic accommodations becoming impossible for students and many others. And there's another huge issue. This is one of the issues I wanted to raise because I think it's important. I've been looking at this and thinking about this for a while, trying to get my head around it. Because I haven't seen anybody mention it before. So here it is. Over the past 10 to 15 years, there has been a massive and devastating gap between wage growth and housing costs. Average wages in Ireland have risen by only about 25 to 30%, but the cost of buying a home has gone up over 90% nationally, and in Dublin more than 100%. Rents in many places have more than doubled. What this means is that even people in steady jobs, the so-called squeeze middle, ordinary working people, are being pushed into housing poverty. They're spending so much of their income on mortgages or rent that there's little left for other basics: food, fuel, childcare or savings. This is not just unfair, it's unsustainable. If wage policy does not align with real living and housing costs, we are condemning ordinary workers and students to a cycle of permanent financial struggle. I mean, this is what's happening at the moment. So what can the government do to help? Well, these are some sensible solutions or some options. Cap energy prices for 2 or 3 years so families and students know what to expect. Ban the penalty on existing customers. Everyone deserves fair rates, not just switchers. I agree with that. I mean, I think, we'd be switching, it's a full-time job switching, with all the switching that you have to do to be watching, everything. I mean, that's unfair on people going out to work that haven't time, to spend switching all day. Keep VAT on energy at the reduced 9% rate instead of raising it back up. That could save households around 130 a year. Everything helps. Freeze NCT and motoring fees. Now, I think in the north of Ireland, they were thinking of just doing the NCT every 2 years. This was one of the options they were discussing, but we haven't really discussed that here in the Republic. Freeze NCT and motoring fees. Don't add any more hidden costs while inflation is still very high. The health insurance more affordable for ordinary people. Restoring the higher tax relief or offer means tested credits. Shine a light on food and telecom prices. We need transparency and anti-gouging rules so supermarkets and broadband providers can't quietly push margins while families struggle. So there's so many of these hidden, increases that are put into contracts that, or we all examining contracts and, getting people to look at every detail in every contract that we sign. No, we're not. But we're signing ourselves up for all kinds of, increases in the year ahead and the year ahead and the year ahead. And finally, index tax bands and credits to inflation, so wages actually stretch to cover rising costs. These are not radical ideas, they are fair, practical and achievable. Other European countries have capped energy bills, introduced targeted relief and taken on unfair pricing practices. Ireland can do the same. Because in the end, this is about dignity. Ordinary workers, students and families shouldn't be punished for simply trying to get by. Stability, fairness and accountability. Those are the policies that can protect the ordinary, decent working person or the squeezed middle and help us all move forward. So there's just a couple of points there on facts. And thanks for listening and sharing with sharing your your comments, because they led me to just dig a bit deeper. But I'm particularly it's not shocking, but I didn't actually I have been thinking about this one to try and get the facts on this. But here's another huge issue. Over the past 10 to 15 years, there's been a massive and devastating gap between wage growth and housing costs. Average wages in Ireland have risen by about 25 to 30%, but the cost of buying a home has gone up by over 90% nationally and a double more than 100%. Rents in many places have more than doubled. What this means is that even people in steady jobs, so-called squeeze middle, as I'm calling, a huge swathe of people, of ordinary, decent working people, are being pushed into housing poverty. I mean, if you just look at younger people and students, people just starting off, or others in difficult situations, etc., they're spending so much of their income on mortgages or rent that there's little left for fuel, childcare or savings. I mean, childcare is like a mortgage in itself. It's huge. Along with all those other costs. I haven't actually looked at the increase in the childcare costs, but I'm sure they're huge as well. So this is not just unfair, it's unsustainable. If wage policy does not align with real living and housing costs, we're condemning ordinary workers and students to a cycle of permanent financial struggle. So again, I went into the issues, the possible solutions, that I'm sure listeners may have a few more solutions, but they're the facts, and the facts speak for themselves. It's absolutely shocking.